Hello everyone, I'm back again, and this time I want to talk about the Series X and how, at least for me, 1 year later, the Series X's value has dropped. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying that the Series X is a terrible console. I'm not saying that PlayStation is the better console. I'm not saying that Series X sucks. All I'm saying is that for me, in my specific use case, the Series X may not be as big of a value as I originally put on it. Now, that being said, let's talk about the positives of the Series X. The Series X has VRR, something Sony still does not have. Come on, Sony, really? The Series X also has Dolby Vision gaming support. Now, most TVs won't support this, admittedly, but if you have an LG OLED, either in the 9 series, you'll get at least Dolby Vision 60 frames per second. If you do not, you will get, and you have something a little bit higher, like the C10 or the C1, you will get Dolby Vision at 120 frames per second. Now, it has been basically proven, though, that the Dolby Vision gaming is mixed at best. Sometimes it really rocks, sometimes it really isn't very good. So, keep that in mind if that is something that is affecting your purchase decision. Now, another thing that the Series X has is backwards compatibility, which is arguably my most favorite thing about this system. I really wish that everybody else would follow suit. However, it should be noted that backwards compatibility is stopping. So Xbox basically announced a while back that they were done doing more games for the backwards compatibility program, which is a real shame because it was one of the major draws, in my opinion, to this console. Another thing that the Series X has is auto HDR, which can kind of enhance, old games, make them look much better. And it also has FPS boost. Now, unfortunately, the FPS boost program has also been canceled out. So that sort of eliminates that as a major plus moving forward. Now, for older games, sure, it's still there, but otherwise, you won't ever see it again. Now, in order to give you why, or tell you why this isn't a huge value proposition for me anymore, I need to give you a little bit of a backstory. Originally, when the PlayStation 3, when I have always been primarily a PlayStation user since just after Nintendo 64. And one of the main reasons why I stuck with PlayStation back in the day was backwards compatibility. But the other reason was because all of my games were physical versions, discs. And, back in the days of PlayStation 3, when my PlayStation 2 broke down, and it took a long time, it broke down right at the end of the generation. When my PlayStation 2 broke down, and I got a backwards compatible PlayStation 3, even though it was the underdog console at the time, I still did not regret my decision, because I could still play through all of my backlog of PS2 games and eventually jump into my PS3 games once they became a little bit bigger and, a little bit more prominent. At about mid through the generation of the PlayStation 3, my now ex-girlfriend bought me a Xbox 360. And I thought, wow, now I own both. This is going to be great. However, it did propose one simple problem for me. What game should I buy what console should I buy the next game on? Because you see, the 360 had mostly the exact same game library as the PlayStation 3. And the main difference was that the 360 ran games much smoother. However, the trade-off to that was you would have multiple discs as opposed to only one disc. Now, me being a physical games collector and already amassing quite the collection on PlayStation 3, I would often go for the PlayStation 3 version, even if it was only slightly inferior, because that was the console I played on. However, I did make some exceptions. Bayonetta was one such exception, where I would buy things on the 360. And of course, Xbox had their exclusives too. Fast forward into the Xbox One era, and once again, I started with PlayStation. The original reason why I started with PlayStation was because I didn't agree with the practices of Microsoft at the time. I'm not going to get into that. There are so many YouTube channels on that. Enough said. Now, that being said, though, at the end of the year, I did eventually end up picking an Xbox One up anyway, because I felt I didn't give it a fair enough shake. And also because my local Best Buy couldn't sell them, and they were almost desperate to get rid of them. So, I made a deal with them. Anyway, I'm not going to mention any more because those people could get in trouble for said deal. Now, I got my hands on the VCR Xbox One. Eventually, when things began to turn around for Xbox, I got a Xbox One S due to a deal at GameStop, where if you traded in your old Xbox One, then you got the new one for a song and a dance. Fast forward to the Xbox One X, and the same deal eventually appeared 2 years later, so I picked up the Xbox One X. However, up until that time, I mostly played on my PlayStation 4, if only because I liked the experience better. That's not to say that the Xbox One was, bad in any way, shape, or form. It's just that I preferred the PlayStation. Now, once I got into the One X era, I began to realize something. And that was that I am still, to this day, and back then, primarily a physical games collector. And it bothers me when I cannot have a physical version of the game for my console. And so I had amassed, again, quite a library on PlayStation 4. And once again, a lot of the games were exactly the same on Xbox One. And so I started to wonder, okay, what is the point of me owning an Xbox if I primarily play on PlayStation? And again, it's not because the Xbox was bad, it's just because that was what I started with. And I enjoyed the experience more on PlayStation than I did on Xbox. This is me personally. This does not encompass the entire world. Now, I did begin to play more on my Xbox One X though, because at around this time, backwards compatibility began to surface, and I was just floored by how great that was, being able to play my old games, even my physical games, on backwards compatibility. But then I began to notice something, and that is that whenever I installed a game on disk, unless I was in offline mode, my installation was throttled. This is a purposeful design choice by Microsoft to basically say, hey, you should run it on digital. It's much easier. And then Game Pass came out. I was floored by the value proposition of Game Pass and what it had on hand to offer. Absolutely floored. The amazing collection of games, I could download them and delete them whenever I wanted. What a great thing! Except it had all the games that I had already owned on PlayStation 4. See, except for, of course, the Xbox exclusives like Halo. So you see where I'm going with this. Now, I still own an Xbox. I still play on Game Pass. So let's fast forward even more. Now we're into our current generation. I picked up both consoles at the beginning. And in retrospect, I don't regret it. The Xbox Series X I played a lot more on than I thought I would. However, Game Pass began to show me kind of something about myself as a gamer. And that is that I both like but absolutely detest digital. And the reason is because with Game Pass, just to use the words of the internet, Game Pass giveth, Game Pass taketh away. And so even though I have a multitude of games I can download and delete at any time, I'm also on a time limit to do so. And with the fact that my PlayStation library has still amassed to quite the sum, what do you think I'm going to jump to first? Yes, that's right, my PlayStation 5, because guess what? Just like all the other generations before, I still have a backlog of PlayStation 4 games that I have not finished yet. And just like before, I have more games on the PlayStation than I ever did on the Xbox. And so, for me, the value proposition begins to dwindle. No matter how much you've got between Game Pass and Game Pass on mobile and Game Pass on PC and all those things, it's harder for me to justify the purchase of a Series X for myself. And only because I'm a physical games collector. Now, to go back to that for just a moment, a lot of the games that I collect physically are Japanese RPGs and or just kind of out there games like Yakuza. Guess what? On Xbox, there is no physical version of the Yakuza series except for the Judgment games and Like a Dragon. The rest of them are all digital. And so I don't really want to buy them again if I don't technically own them. And this is the problem I've been having with Xbox. Now, they have been winning me over slowly with their sales. I will say this, the Xbox has way better digital sales than PlayStation has ever had. But as a gamer of old, my preference is still to play on disc. And so I find myself gravitating much more towards my PlayStation 5 because I know that I can play my PlayStation 4 discs on it. And depending on what PlayStation's next move is with, say, Spartacus, I may even still want to play more on PlayStation because of the older game selection, depending on if they make it worth my while or not. And so what I find I've been using my Xbox for is some of the Xbox Day 1 exclusives, mostly backwards compatibility, and also games that run a little bit smoother with VRR, which I can download from Game Pass. And of course, I've also been taking advantage of the digital sales whenever they pop up. So then the question becomes, was it really worth it to pick up the Series X? And I find myself consistently questioning myself for it because it's like, as a physical games collector, and as someone who primarily plays on physical games, and as someone who also, wants to own his games, the Xbox Series X is blurring the line between digital and physical, and I both appreciate it but also am not fond of it. I want to be able to own all of the series that I really love. I want to be able to have a physical version of the series that I really love. And so when you only give me a digital version of the series that I really love, I start to veer towards the competition. But this is just me. And again, I'm not saying that PlayStation 5 is better. I'm just saying that just from the beginning, PlayStation has sort of been my preferential console because of my particular playstyle and habits. But what about you? You're probably asking. Well, have you ever owned an Xbox before? If not, get one. The Xbox Series X is amazing, if you can find one, from a value proposition alone. You get hundreds of games through Game Pass, you get backwards compatibility, you get most of the latest games, including anything, in the future owned by Bethesda or what could be Activision soon. You get anything that, is Xbox exclusive, like Halo, Forza, Gears of War, Fable, stuff like that. If that's intriguing to you, honestly, pick one up. However, if you tend to veer more towards the other franchises on, say, PlayStation, like God of War, Spider-Man, Uncharted, Yakuza is no longer exclusive, so I can't use that. Persona, again, that's a Japanese RPG. Maybe some of you don't know. Gran Turismo instead of Forza. Maybe that's your preference. Horizon Zero Dawn. Stuff like that. I know there's more, but honestly, my brain is frying on me now. And so, a year later, was the Xbox Series X worth it for me? You know what? I'm still not entirely sure. Because I still play on it. I just don't play on it as much as I thought I would. And therein lies the rub. If you're not playing on your $600+ console, was it really worth the money spent on it? Or would it have been better just to get the Switch and the PlayStation and call it a day? For me, the answer is kind of unknown. Because I know that more great stuff to Xbox is coming. Or at least I assume it is. And there's the other rub. Just like with the previous generations of Xbox One, I am trying to be hopeful that there are more things on the way that will make me want to invest more in the Xbox ecosystem than I have already. Because I want to support them. I want them to be around, But the rub of that is, if nothing comes up and nothing piques my fancy, I may consider selling this console. I'm not going to lie. Even with the rarity that it currently has. I may consider selling it because, again, from a value proposition, so far, at least for me, it makes more sense to still play on my PlayStation 5. Except for one thing. PlayStation, seriously, get VRR. How long is it going to take? Sorry, I had to get that little rant out. But anyways, guys, that'll do it for now. If you like this video, smash the like button. If you didn't, smash the dislike button. And what do you think? Tell me down in the comments. Do you think that the Xbox Series X deserves more praise? Do you agree with my viewpoint on it? Are you more of a physical games collector, or are you more of a digital games collector? And what console did you go for? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Just be happy, enjoy what you own, and enjoy the games you own. Now that the pandemic is somewhat winding down, I hope, at least it is in my part of the world, I hope that you're all staying healthy, staying safe, and that, you are, that your family and friends are well. And I will see you guys in the next one. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Bye for now.